Really good piece up right now at SI.com from our friend Ross Dellenger. He's on Twitter at Ross Dellenger. It has to do with the name, image, and likeness debate that is raging and how the new proposed transfer rule might actually be somehow interwoven with that. The headline reads, as the NCAA compensation debate rages, transfer rule reform now a key part of the equation. Ross joins us on the show. How are you, Delly?
Good, Matt. How are you?
I'm good. You miss Mardi Gras?
Yes, badly.
Really? What did you do?
Well, we had quote-unquote DC Mardi Gras up here, which is
Right.
Which was like a month ago,
Yeah.
and all the Louisiana people came up here. That was like a lot of fun, because it was Louisiana people putting it on.
Right.
It was fun.
Right.
But this past weekend, DC did its own kind of Mardi Gras, where DC people do Mardi Gras, and it left a lot to be desired.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Sorry. You coming here for St. Patty's Day?
No, actually, my trip. I'm coming there next week, and my trip it falls in between Mardi Gras and St. Patty's Day. It's just it's unfortunate that it fell in between the two things, but I will be there next week. Kind of a spring tour, if you will, around the southeast a little bit. So I'll be in Mississippi and doing some Louisiana stuff too.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing you then. Let's talk about the piece that you have up right now at SI.com, which I find fascinating because college football is going through a major sea change with transfers and with name, image, and likeness. Let's start with what happened on Capitol Hill. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago with Mark Emmert? Because that seems to be the baseline. If you would just give us the Cliff's Notes version to catch everybody up to where we are today.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago, and it was exactly a week after the proposal was announced, exactly a week after Mark Emmert and some other NCAA officials made the trip up here to D.C. to sit in front of a Senate subcommittee hearing. And it's been probably the biggest, most significant event of this whole NIL congressional debate going on right now was that hearing. And in that hearing, senators, and I was there, several of them, chastised Mark Emmert for his job performance and how he operates in his job, how the NCAA operates. Lasted them for the old archaic amateurism rules and things like that. And really not only, Matt talked a lot about the NIL situation and how athletes should be compensated in some way, but really hammered him on a great number of other topics. And one of the senators there, and I think a lot of the congressmen up here agree from meetings that I've had with the last couple of weeks, is that the whole NCAA needs to reform, from transfers to the medical issues to compensation. It just needs a full-scale reform. And I think what you saw with this transfer proposal, I don't think it was just coincidence. It was really, a week outside of that meeting amid all this NIL stuff going on. Emmert in the NCAA is trying to ask Congress to step in and create a federal law, a federal NIL law that will supersede all these state laws, because they don't want all these state laws. They think it'll be chaos. It'll end up in the courts, which it probably will. Right. So they're asking Congress, pleading to them to create a federal law. And Congress just right now isn't necessarily doing that. They're kind of sitting back a little bit. They're approaching this. First of all, they have to get educated, which honestly, Matt, it's been interesting up here. I've found that congressmen and women aren't necessarily up to date on college athletics and how it works. So that's been interesting. So they got to get educated first before they do any kind of bills and legislative stuff. But the bottom line is the NCAA knows, especially after that subcommittee meeting, it's got to start changing stuff and it's got to start reforming. And I think a part of that was this transfer proposal.
So the NCAA wants Congress to pass a law about the name, image, and likeness to have all the states under one umbrella instead of all the individuals. And part of their compromise, I don't want to oversimplify it, is modifying the transfer rule, which would allow athletes in any sport a one-time exemption. You could transfer without sitting out. The thing that was in your piece today, Ross, that really struck me was some of the athletic directors, commissioners, the people you spoke to both on the record and anonymously, how much like they took ownership of it, like we did this to ourselves. So what is the general feeling if the transfer rule goes into place? What's the net effect going to be to college athletes, mainly college football and basketball?
Yeah, well, there are. I think everybody kind of knows by now, and I wrote about it last week, right after that transfer proposal was announced. But the coaches are against this. You know, they don't want to see this. They're against it for a great many number of reasons. ADs are more for it, and I think it's the ACC and the Big Ten have actually come out and released a statement saying they are for it. So a lot of ADs and conference officials are more for it. However, they still have some issues with it, and there's some unanswered questions. You know, the APR, you lose a academic progress rate, and there are stiff penalties that come with not meeting a certain benchmark for a team not meeting a certain benchmark when it comes to APR. Without getting into the details, when you have a transfer, you lose basically 50% of the points for that player when a player leaves. So if you remove, which they're going to do with this proposal, remove the penalty on a player to transfer by sitting out, if you remove that penalty, you know, common sense says there's going to be a spike in transfers, which could affect the APR. So there's going to have to be an adjustment of the APR. There's some ADs scared that there'll be some mass exoduses, basically, some mass transfers, which we used to see years ago, which kind of led to the implementation of this in the 60s, you know, this sitting out one year, just so many people leaving. Imagine a basketball team, you had 15 scholarships and 6 players saying, we're leaving, we're going to go play for the other guys, and we're going to be eligible next year. So there's some concern over that. You know, there needs to be some kind of date or deadline for a player to announce that he's transferring and then to be eligible at the next school. You know, this was brought up to me by a football coach in an AD, Matt. Imagine an LSU football player after the first week of fall camp, which would be before the academic semester starts. So the first week of fall camp, after the first week of fall camp, he says, I'm leaving. I'm going to go transfer to Ole Miss. And then he's eligible at Ole Miss for that season. That would be odd. I don't think a lot of people want that to happen. So there's a lot of unanswered questions about this. And I think there's still a lot you know, and then you have the coaches who mostly fear poaching off each other's roster. I think that's a little overblown in a way, but you already have that going on now, really.
I'm good with it. Are you good with it?
I think so. I do think there needs to be some answers for some of these things, you know. You know, it is unfair that a player has to sit out a whole year, right? I mean, it seems unfair to me. It seems like it's kind of always been unfair. You know, I'm pro player in a lot of ways, but I'm also pro a lot of these rules that have been around for a while because of the NCAA structure and college athletics and why it makes it different and special to the pros. But this one seems unfair.
Timeline for the potential transfer rule implementation?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and one that nobody seems to have an exact answer to. So they're going to conferences are going to be meeting at their spring meetings, winter meetings, whatever. They're going to be meeting about this, coming to a conclusion on what they're going to do. They have fast tracked this because they're saying it's a criteria change to the waiver process and not a quote unquote rule change. Rule changes have to go a whole year through the legislative process. A criteria change just moved pretty much immediately, and they'll have I think a big meeting. The D1 Council meets in April, and I think it meets again in the summer. So I believe at either one of those times this could go through. They want it to be enacted starting in the 2020 2021 season, which would be August.
Wow. Well, I'll give an opinion on it later. One more thing. What about the crux of all this is the name, image, and likeness. Any sense talking to either Congress people or administrators when they'd like to have resolution on that aspect of this?
Well, hopefully at SI.com next week you'll read a deeper story into that. I've
Okay.
spent the last 2 or 3 weeks meeting with lawmakers up here. It's crazy, man. We move up here from Baton Rouge for my wife's job covering Congress, and here I am probably having more meetings with lawmakers these days than she is. It's been weird, but it's been interesting. It's a good time to be in D.C. because this is obviously a significant event all happening here. And I've been meeting with lawmakers, trying to get everybody's take on the situation, talking to ADs, trying to put all this together and hoping next week to put it all together in thing that piece that maybe answers a lot of people's questions of when, how, what's going to happen next. But here's the main feeling, there's going to have to be one unifying federal.
Yeah. Okay. We'll look for that next week, but you've been up on Capitol Hill. You've been at the United States Capitol building?
I have not. All this goes around.
Oh.
It happens on Capitol Hill, but not at the Capitol. So,
okay.
And I've had to learn this, man, because I didn't know anything about this. Capitol Hill, quote unquote, is quite literally the hill, geographic hill that the Capitol and other government buildings sit on.
Right.
And so surrounding the Capitol, if you can imagine like a barracks almost, it's like a square of buildings, Senate and House buildings, and all this happens, all these meetings, all these senators and congressman offices, they're all in these buildings that surround the Capitol. But I have not yet actually had anything inside the Capitol. So all the committee meetings and all these other office meetings happen in these buildings around the Capitol on the Hill.
Flip-flops or shoes?
No, it's been a while since I wore flip-flops out here, man. It hasn't cracked 65 here, since, I don't know, early November, maybe October. It's been brutal.
Okay. Just making sure, man. I mean, you're at the Capitol. You need to wear shoes. No flip-flops.
This
isn't SEC Media Days, Ross. You can't wear flip-flops.
I know. I've been wearing suits, man. I only have 2 suits. I have a gray suit and a blue one. Dude, I need some more suits, man. I found myself needing more suits and nice clothes. So I've got to get that done at some point.
When you're in town next week, I'll take you over to Carriages. They got a great deal going on right now. It's like 50.
I'll have flip-flops next week.
It's up to, no, it's 35 degrees tonight.
Next week, though.
Next week could be in the 30s. It could be in the 80s. You lived here, you know.
I know. Well, I'm bringing flip-flops either way.
All right, well, I'm taking you to Carriages, and we'll go get you some duds, all right?
All right, it's a deal.
Okay, man, I'll see you. That's Ross Dellenger. He's on Twitter at Ross Dellenger. Give him a follow.